What is the nature of existence? What is the nature of the things that exist? Does reality exist because we perceive it? Or does reality exist independent of our perception? These questions have been central to one of the most enduring debates in all of philosophy. Recently, a few contemporary thinkers are advancing radical and controversial new ideas on the subject. One such philosopher, Jeffrey Grubb, has written an extensive treatise entitled Mereological Nihilism, Quantum Atomism and the Impossibility of Physical Constitution. Through extreme physical reductionism, he has arrived at a denial of the independent existence of the reality that we experience, uniting ancient Greek and Indian Buddhist thought with the cutting-edge scientific revelations of quantum physics. Jeffrey Grubb aims to demonstrate that the reality we perceive isn't real. We tend to draw a distinction between material objects, such as the food that we eat or the pets that we own, and immaterial objects, such as concepts and ideas. Material objects clearly exist because they have readily apparent physical properties. We're able to touch, see, smell, or otherwise interact with them in some way. Immaterial things, such as ideas, do seem to exist, but not in any observably physical sense. Although ideas may ultimately be manifestations of physical things, such as chemical and electrical impulses within the brain, the idea itself exists metaphysically. It's not generally considered true, for example, to say that Harry Potter exists. Everyone will acknowledge that the character exists as a figment of people's imaginations, but few people would claim that Harry Potter, as described in the various novels and films in which he appears, is an actual living, breathing person. It's true then to say that Harry Potter exists as an idea, and only as an idea. A real person, such as Chuck Norris, is different in that he has a physical self, a body, including arms, legs, etc. Although Harry Potter and Chuck Norris are both widely recognizable characters, prevalent within contemporary pop culture, there's a clear distinction that can be drawn between the two. Chuck Norris is made up of physical material, and therefore real, whereas Harry Potter is not. What truly differentiates physical things, things which actually exist, from metaphysical or non-material things, things which do not actually exist, is that the former are made of physical stuff, whereas the latter are not. It would seem then that it is a fundamental and defining property of things which actually exist, that they are composed of physical material. The mereological nihilist argument is essentially that physical composition does not actually occur. As such, while there is such a thing as a physical reality, none of the objects we experience belong to it. To understand the case against the ideas of physical composition, we must first consider these ideas. In the reality that we experience, all things are made up of smaller pieces or parts. A zebra, for example, consists of a head, a tail, 4 legs, etc. These pieces in and of themselves are not a zebra. They are the things that make up the zebra. Looking closer, we see smaller pieces, such as a nose, eyes, and fur. Closer still, and we see living cells. But even these cells are made up of parts. The center of the cell is the nucleus, which contains the DNA. The DNA contains billions of pairs of nucleotides. Each nucleotide consists of 3 basic parts, each of which is a molecule. Each molecule is made of atoms. For any physical object that we encounter, there are billions upon billions of parts that make it up. In philosophy, the logic concerning the relationship between parts within a whole, and the relationship of those parts to the whole, is known as Mereology. Mereology seeks to explain, for example, how it is that the pieces of a zebra come together to constitute a zebra. It's a fundamental assumption of physical existence, that the pieces that make up the things around us come together in some way to compose the objects we experience. The process of examining the pieces of something for purposes of finding the smallest, most fundamental parts is known as reductionism. Noticing that things can be broken into smaller pieces, many philosophers postulated that there were such things as the smallest pieces, pieces so small and fundamental that they cannot be divided any further. A pre-Socratic Greek philosopher named Democritus called these smallest pieces atoma, and the belief that there are such things as indivisible, fundamental particles is now known as atomism. Democritus believed that atoms were permanent and unchanging, an assertion that Jeffrey Grubb categorically disagrees with. But where Grubb's atomism differs from Democritus, it finds remarkable similarity to certain Indian Buddhist traditions. Dharmakirti, a 7th century South Indian Brahmin, held that atoms were point-like and temporary pieces of energy. Not only does Grubb agree with this, but he also points out that it is astoundingly in line with modern quantum physical data. Although atomists posit a limit to reductionism, not all philosophers agree with this approach. Opposed to atomism is the theory of infinite divisibility, the idea that no matter how small the piece, it can always